One of the most important problems that we see happening in our industry is that people are not paying any attention when it comes to leveling out their surfaces when installing large format tiles. And in this episode, we're going to talk about why that's important and what kind of things to look for to make sure that your floor is ready for a large format tile. Stay tuned. Okay, so let's talk about surface preparation. It doesn't matter if it's a wall or a floor, surfaces have a standard in which they need to meet in order for a large format tile to be installed. The Tile, Tiles and Marble Association of Canada, which is called the TTMAC, or the Tile Council of North America, which is in the States. These two organizations have set some standards as for tile contractors to make sure that these things are met and before a tile is installed. And the requirements are basically very simple. You need to understand, first of all, that level and flat are very different things. You can place, if you ever work with a level, you can place it on any surface, and you see that bubble that that's in the middle, and you want to make sure that's in the level, that's in the middle, and that's considered a level surface. But if you look down, to that surface level, and you see voids underneath that level, then you know that surface is not flat. It may be level, but it's not flat, and we really care about flat when we're working with large format tile. Level is also still important. For instance, in the bathroom, if your surface is not level, then you're going to have the vanity sit kind of funny, or the toilet not sit properly and get the kind of the maximum contact with the floor. So we're going to talk about surface flatness here. The requirements that has been set is basically within a 10 feet area. If you were to have, let's say, a piece of metal which is considered a straight edge, that's how we kind of test it, and we see that along this 10-foot surface there should be a maximum of 1/8 difference in terms of flatness. So if you see anything that's more than 1/8, then that's a problem, and that surface needs to be leveled, especially when you're working, it needs to be flattened when we're working with large format tile. For smaller tiles, it's a little bit more easy going. We were looking at it from a 3/16 to a 1/4 inch. It's a number that's sort of in between. It's actually 6 millimeters to be exact, but I'm trying to kind of convert it so that people at home understand. So it's 3/16 to a 1/4 inch within 10 feet. If you're looking at a smaller surface, let's say it's a shower, obviously you don't have something like a 10-foot surface, then it's 1/16 all the way. It doesn't matter if it's a large format tile or it's a smaller tile, it's 1/16. So very, very important to make sure that these surfaces meet these requirements, because when we go in to install tile, there's a requirement on the coverage. And if there's voids on the surface, there's waves, or on the wall, if the studs are not properly built and you have gaps that develop behind a tile, that's going to limit the amount of coverage that we're going to get on those tiles. So the requirement, for instance, in a shower is a 95% mortar coverage between the tile and the wall. And for a dry surface, let's say it's a kitchen area, and it's a floor, that's a minimum of 80% that has to be there. Obviously, we want to make sure we get that 100%, but they have set a standard and they say minimum should be 80%. So let's kind of break it down in terms of what is a large format tile, just to me. So the Tile, Tiles and Marble Association of Canada, they've said that any tile that's over 380 millimeter, or any tile that might have that size on one side of it. So in this case, we're seeing a lot of tiles that are 12 by 24, 24 by 24. These are all considered large format tiles, and actually the bigger they get, and we're seeing tiles that are like 24 by 48. You really have to make sure that these requirements are met. And unfortunately, I'm seeing a lot of contractors and homeowners are not really aware of this. They'll come in and they'll just install a tile, whatever the floor they have, and not really pay attention to these things. And then obviously the problems show themselves later on. So what can you do to create a flat surface so that you don't have any issues for your installation? There's a couple of things you could do. the first one is using a self-leveler. If we're dealing with floor, self-levelers, very, very good to use, and they got to be used properly, obviously following manufacturer's recommendation. When it comes to self-levelers, you really need to keep in mind that what was currently existing on that floor is an important factor. So if you had, let's say, vinyl and you want to throw a self-level on vinyl, well, that's not going to really work because it's not going to bond really well. Self-levelers need a primer in order to bond to the surface that they're being poured on. So if you don't prime the surface very well, you can risk the self-leveler coming up. Especially for pliable surfaces, it needs to be primed, and you need to follow the manufacturer's direction. If they say you use this particular primer for this particular self-leveler, follow their procedure. The most traditional and most common way to level surface, and this is by far, I think, the best way, and in terms of the cost of it, it really doesn't make any difference, you know, compared to using self-levelers, is creating a mortar bed. And what a mortar bed is basically a mixture of concrete and sand that gets mixed with water, and then it gets screeded across the surface. So if we're doing large areas like a large kitchen, we want to make sure that this application is definitely used, because even with a self-leveler, if you're not careful, you can create some humps and valleys, and it can be very tricky, and it takes a lot of time to get really good at it as well. So you don't have the time, or you don't want to risk messing up the work, and it can be very costly and to remove it if it's done wrong. So, but you can't make that mistake with screeding a mortar bed, because it's just a much more safer way to go about doing it. And that's the method I use. That's the method I like to promote as well. And when it comes to these large format tiles, it just does a phenomenal job at making sure that the floor is not only flat, but you can also level it, because you can build up that floor to however height that you want. You know, there's no limitations necessarily to that. So this is considered a sort of a medium mortar bed. So that's sort of what I want to discuss in this episode. Very important, guys, when you're working with a contractor, or even thinking about sort of doing it yourself, and working with large format tile, it's very important to have a surface that is ready for tile before you start to put down those tiles. Thanks very much, and see you in the next episode. Thanks again for watching this video. You know, my goal is to help all Canadians learn about tile and tile installations, so everyone can benefit from all this information that's available to us. So if you like this information, please show your support and hit that subscribe button and the like button, and we'll see you in the next video.